Hey, everybody, welcome back to this. I'm your host, Shauna Griffiths, and today's Real Talk is with a real leader who has stood out to me this past, I think, year and a half since we first met, as an absolute beacon in the journey. And I truly feel so honored to have him here today. So with that, welcome, Michael Tennant.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you so much
Yeah,
for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So funny. So we were introduced, and at that time, as I said, about a year and a half ago, and something struck me right away in our conversation. And it was this connection and this truly, you were so present in the conversation, which is really different, I think, especially with everything that's gone on in the last year and a half. A lot of times when I meet people, there's this swirling energy or this distraction, and you were so present for the conversation. And then as I got to know you, I was like, right, because he was actually curious about the conversation and actually empathetic in the conversation, which is where you're living these days in this amazing company that you've built, Curiosity Labs, that focuses so much on curiosity and empathy and so much more that we're going to get into today. So give us an idea of your evolution. How did you get to the seat that you're in?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I come from humble beginnings. My parents are Jamaican immigrants who came here in the late 70s. I grew up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, a very different Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn for those New Yorkers out there than what exists now. It was really embattled. Violence, drugs, people, but also striving families trying to take advantage of the opportunity of being in New York. Um, I came up through media and advertising. I spent the first 7 years of my career at MTV and then at Vice Media, where I kind of cut my teeth on an entrepreneurial work, understanding partnerships, managing teams. I created Vice's ad network, AdVice, and ultimately ran their sales operations team. And then I spent 7 years on the other side of the business, other side being the advertising side of the business, brokering partnerships for brands like Procter & Gamble, Delta, Google, and many more. I left that world as the head of branded content of an agency, helping them PhD Media as part of Omnicom, one of the big three. And I headed up their branded content division. But in 2016, around the election of that year, but even before then, I had a seismic shift in my life and my family's life, where my older brother, Chris, he suffered a stroke. And also the reaction to the election that year, I started to look a lot more at how my time was being spent, and finding dissonance when realizing that my values weren't aligned with how I was spending the large majority of my time at work. In addition to that, things that I would unpack later, I just felt, in that setting, I just felt I didn't even know, but my well-being wasn't being taken care of. A lot of it being directed by my choices of where I chose to put myself, but also what I chose to accept
Yeah.
from bosses, from clients. So I left and I created Curiosity Lab in 2017. And Curiosity Lab at the time was a services business built around helping organizations connect to their values and use it to strengthen and create authentic connections with their communities, whether that be B2B, that be employee to employer, or it be, B2C. But that business didn't succeed. We had a hard time getting businesses to pay us for the strategy. So we'd invest a lot of time on strategy and development, and then we'd get experiential work, and we're small startups, so we're executing the work, and then our business development pipeline hemorrhage and other choices that rookie business entrepreneur mistake. But within all of that chaos, and assuring that we were using ourselves as a guinea pig, like practicing what we preach on values, really being, aggressive about hiring people of color and women, even though, and giving them opportunity, aggressive about teaching young talent and everything that I know, what I've learned over 15 years. And out of that came the card game, actually Curious. Basically the way that came to being is that, we did a group values exercise individually and listened to each other's values, which now, by the way, we've created a digital version of the same values exercise on valuesexercise.com. I was going to say you should share that with your team.
Oh
It's
yeah,
called
absolutely.
valuesexercise.com. We're so grateful that the universe let us get that URL. um, but we did that values exercise individually, which was just beautiful. Like seeing everyone. I was nervous as the leader, and the first time I'd ever really facilitated that with my own team. But seeing everyone's values and then together using the same process to personify the values of Curiosity Lab. And we came out with curiosity, connection, community, and compassion. And we're like, okay, if we use these like almost like a prism and shined our powers through it, what could we affect? And we
Yeah.
decided within the time that we had together that summer, we wanted to try to affect the divisiveness that was brewing in this country.
Mm,
And we wanted to do it in a time-based way. I wanted to teach them SMART goals: specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, time-based.
right.
So we set our sights on the midterm elections at the end of the summer,
Okay.
and whatever we could do across different mediums to affect that. And a tactic to assure we were paying it forward, not just talking about fighting divisiveness, that we were teaching how to, was actually curious.
Yeah, actually curious. Folks, for those who are listening, we're both holding up the card. You can't really see mine in the light, but as Michael just mentioned, when he said like, yeah, I should show the other values exercise.com to my team, it's because I've started using these actually curious cards with my team that I lead. And it is so incredible to watch people as they're listening to the question and they're processing it and they're thinking about, oh gosh, it's almost like you can think that you can watch them think like, oh gosh, am I okay to say this out loud in this circle of people? And that's why it's so important, I think, to, again, the kind of going off of what you're saying is to create that space of empathy, that create that space of safety. But it is incredible. I love to use them.
Thank you for sharing it with your team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we think of everyone who gets the game and connects with the game and falls in love with it as a new soldier on the front lines of spreading empathy. And then you go and you bring it to your team as a leader. That means so much to us.
Oh, good.
You said something that I wanted to highlight, which was how you can notice as people are checking in with themselves and their safety in what they're about to share. And that's really astute that you key in on that, because like the game was meant to be a Trojan horse to like enable people to do that in some ways without even, like you said, without knowing. Because we think that that level of kind of internal curiosity is so important for our own well-being, first and foremost, but also if we are going to engage, survive, and return to engaging in these difficult conversations, then there's almost like a loop where you need to understand what's happening for you and how you take care of you in that process, which then gives you greater capacity to open your lens to what's happening to other people, which you're already doing because you're like maybe just like a step ahead there, like what's happening so that you can support them if they need it. They're exploring stuff that they might not be as comfortable with. And that cyclical process, checking in with yourself and checking in with others, it just like strengthens your ability to do that over time. And that's what we need to do if we're going to talk about race and we're going to talk about gender. We're going to talk about ability and how we can catch our biases. So that was the original, so if you like, we're playing a game, but the original brief was, how can we help people be willing to say, well, man, I might be wrong, or man, there's something there that I didn't realize that colors me seeing someone as a human and an equal. So we got deep real fast, but like just by playing the game, people actually start practicing these things. And if they connect to the brand and then want to connect deeper to the other things that we're doing, then we can understand, well, hey, this is what Shauna just described. Well, we have these emotions that come up in every situation. And the more you can get curious and comfortable with the whole spectrum of the emotions, is the greater ability you have to be present, as you said.
Yeah, absolutely. And So I want to talk about the car just a little bit more because, and in the ecosystem of the offerings you have, because one of the things I love so much about what you're doing is you have different tools that you're able to arm, whether it's individuals or organizations with, to really affect that change. And not everybody is going to resonate with a card game, perhaps, but I love it. Even like some in my looking into what you've been doing, workshops that you have, workouts, I think you call them, just these different avenues. But one of the other things too is about the card game. I've even seen how you've done, now they're available at Crate and Barrel, crateandbarrel.com, folks, in case you need a last minute Christmas gift or holiday gift.
Actuallycurious.com.
Yes, absolutely. I was going to say, and actuallycurious.com. I think that the thing that I think is so beautiful about the way you're doing that is it helps to make it available and reach different people in different mindsets, because I think sometimes people think that this type of tool or this type of conversation is only meant for people who are already leaning this way. And I think when you do something like Crate and Barrel and it takes it more to the quote unquote masses, I just really love the way you've done that. And also I'm a big fan of brand partnerships. And so I know you've done that a lot. And so just to be there in their channels, I think is really smart.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. I think Actually Curious itself, we really, when we create additional decks, it's because we see a new opportunity to reach new audiences. Actually, the deck that Crate and Barrel has is the Happy Hour edition, which I don't know if you have it. It's like the magenta colored deck.
No, I've got the same one that the one that you generously gifted to me when we first met.
Totally. So the Actually Curious deck that you have, it's called the Curiosity edition. It's the original game.
Right.
In it, there are 4 colors that progress in intimacy, from blue to green to yellow to pink.
Right.
And really, the rules inside the card deck, and a lot of people follow them, a lot of people don't. We do different kind of gameplay styles through our workshops, and we teach those as well in our consumer as well as our corporate workshops. But the main rule that you wanna just like keep at heart is start light and meet people where they're at. You're gonna be so much more effective if you start light, get people warmed up, get people comfortable being vulnerable, and then go deeper progressively. So that deck alone, if you buy that alone, then you have the ability to go from the blue questions, which should be questions that are easy to ask a stranger, up to the pink questions all in one deck. Okay. But even there, we found some folks were like, this is too intense, too quick. And we created the Happy Hour edition for 2 reasons. So that's named because the questions are themed around what makes us happy. Around our dreams, our ambitions, our cherished memories. We called it the Happy Hour edition because we wanted it to be appealing to people who were looking for a game to play in a party situation or in cocktails or ladies' night or, just kicking it with the homies. So then I just that illustration, that was the second deck. And it was like, okay, well, we're probably leaving some people off the table with a lot of people because this does get pretty intense. So let's create the Happy Hour edition. Then we created the Culture edition to go even lighter, the purple deck. So in there, it's like, let's meet people. Everybody talks about TV and art and culture. So let's meet people at water cooler talk, but take them a step deeper. And then they can go up to the Happy Hour or up to the Curiosity. And then on the anniversary of George Floyd dying, sadly, but it was a catalytic moment that's really affected a lot of change and affected my life in a really meaningful way. On the anniversary of his death, to celebrate him, we released the Human Rights Edition. So we went up because actually the fans, the super fans, like, dare I say it, Shauna, can I?
Oh, you can call me a super fan. Okay. I was just saying, I'm total fangirling.
All right, thank you. I didn't want to be presumptuous, but
yeah, I'm a super fan.
Our super fans really want to get into even the more meaningful conversation. So that deck is about really helping us. I use it mostly like I feel most comfortable, even me as the founder, I feel most comfortable using it as a solo journaling prompt to explore my biases, or like we use them in a workshop setting as well. And we'll pull questions that seem relevant to what we need to discuss. But I guess what I wanted to say is, we're proliferating into content and into different mediums. We're ironing out as we speak an NFT project that is really going to be tailored to almost like how we build relationship with our super fans and giving them advanced access to things. But the cards also, like everything we do is about how we can meet people where they're at,
Yeah.
right? The cards do that, but
Mm-hmm.
also on a meta level, I know I'm going to create a family edition.
Mm-hmm.
We have a name in mind, but it's really
Yeah.
for helping younger kids connect with the family as well, and being really
Mm.
accessible for them. So we're constantly thinking the decks will create new ones so that
Right.
we continue to meet everyone. And then the workshops, as you mentioned, in 2021, for the first 36 weeks, we did workshops every single Sunday at 2.
Oh,
Um, we did that to form like ritual, but we also did it because, maybe after you get out of church, you might want to have a secular, a non-denominational way of
right.
connecting and seeing people. And also it gave something people different. It also gave us an opportunity to connect with thought leaders and
Mm.
share our platform with them, and vice versa. We also did some over 35 workshops with organizations like NASA, Bumble,
Yeah, yeah.
IDEO. We did an entrepreneur in residency where we really unpacked the tools of empathy, how that works within organizations, with an agency called Arnold Havas in Boston.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think
Let me
at
just
this point,
say, it is incredible. As someone who, I don't even know if I told you this since we had last talked, I had lost my job in the midst of COVID downsizing and reinvented myself when I created SLG Impact. And so spent time doing that. Thank you for the support. And that is hard. It is so hard when you have a vision, and the way I've continued to express it is by creating what was the first the content series, which is now this podcast. But just again, that's why I say you've been such a beacon to me, just to watch you just continue to like rocket ship what you're doing and be so tapped in. And again, it's like I was saying to you earlier before we actually started recording, is like I've just been watching you, like these announcements and things that you're doing, and I'm just so grateful to see that. And again, it's been a beacon to me, but I'm also grateful to see it because you are making the impact that has been so much what I've dedicated such a part of myself. And so it's just amazing to see you doing it at such scale. So just thank you.
yeah, thank you for honoring that, and thank you for your work and seeing my work. And I really hope that we can create like the context to synergize even more.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Honestly, I think I am overwhelmed. And a
Yeah.
part of the reason why you can hear me like dropping all of this is today I've been just trying to squeeze time to
Mhm.
revisit back to my purpose,
Mm.
how I'm feeling in my body, and
Right.
make sure that we're prioritizing where we put our energies and attention going into 2022.
Ooh.
Um, because at the end of the day, my this urgency and focus and fervor, as you know, Shauna, really happened after I lost two of my brothers.
Mhm.
And looking at uh, them leaving us before the age of 50, that was one like major shift in perception of the value of time and energy, and where I put my time and energy and my well-being,
Yeah.
as a container, a one-word container of all of
Yeah.
that. But also, as you know, I lost my job as well after
Mhm.
those tragedies,
Yeah.
when working for a nonprofit that works on mental health and works on, obesity and heart conditions in communities of color. So it was almost like that was my seismic ship in like, you know, which companies have the right, or organizations have the right values and have the right to get access to this,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
access to this energy and this
Yeah.
one life that I have, you know?
Yeah.
So I see you so much in terms of um, your resilience, being faced with hardships, and then it compounding with COVID. I was lucky in the sense that I was pretty rooted in my values and my commitment to checking in with my emotional state and my well-being before COVID started.
Yeah.
So when it got
Likewise.
even crazier, I had that moment of like, oh man, like I'm unemployed, I'm pursuing an entrepreneurial venture, and now there's COVID. Um, like I don't have biz dev contacts, like
Yeah.
I'm pitching services business, which is my old life, and people are like spinning my wheels and then like ghosting
Yeah.
me. And like, and so I just said, I don't know if can I curse on your
Yeah.
podcast?
Yeah. It's real talk.
Yeah, I said, fuck it. I said, no
Yeah.
more, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I gotta start from like here first. And
Yeah.
like maybe my happiness means putting out my working content. I did that first. Maybe my happiness means like this card game. Maybe it means like throwing a Hail Mary and giving away like free PDFs of the card game because I think people need it right now
Yeah.
in the midst of COVID. And so stuff like that, which it was like, let's check in with the values, check in with how it feels, and then surrender. And
Mm.
so a lot of that was still very like woo-woo or be cynical to some of those things, even though I was finding healing through like dipping my toes in some of those things.
Right.
But what I found during COVID was the ability I kind of put down in paper what I had done and how I was like surrendering to my values, my purpose, and connecting to the people who mattered to me most and just living for them and me. That's it. And then momentum started coming.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, I think our work is pretty applicable for helping folks get into these difficult but necessary conversations on a personal level, but also on a professional level. As you dip your toes deeper, I think it helps you strengthen a practice of checking in with yourself, your values, of like having like the questions allow you to have more stimulus to ask yourself what really matters to you. What do you
Yeah.
care about?
Yeah.
But then we've then honed them into workshops that allow us to guide you in how you can do that individually or how corporations can bring that in. And from a corporation standpoint, that work that the individual needs to do, and frankly, like it all still comes back to the individual. We're teaching the
Yeah.
individuals how to connect so that they can model that to the collective.
Totally.
But what you learn allows you to be better at confronting the difficult emotions, fear, shame, anger, sadness. And these come up when you're confronting change, not just around, social justice, but also around the changing workplace, around automation, around, crisis, around retention issues.
Yeah.
So kind of that's where we are. And I think at this point, it's kind of like, we need to edit, but we've also been able to manifest some wonderful leaders into our lives who can maybe helm some of these kind of vertical pursuits
Okay.
as
Yeah.
we pursue spreading empathy in a horizontal way.
Yeah. It's so, as you were talking about, it just really struck me this, I think your tools really help people to get closer to their human qualities. And I think sometimes in the corporate world, there can be this like either expectation, or whether it's you expect yourself to operate this way or other people expect you to operate kind of in this robotic way. And I think that with all that we've been facing, like you mentioned earlier, like seismic shift that you went through, but I think our world is going through such a massive shift, and like that's no longer, to a large degree, that's no longer acceptable. And I think that the more we can tap into ourselves and realizing our own just the humanity in ourselves and others, I think there's really isn't a separation. We are people, we're not robots at work. And so I think that's when we really get to be our best for ourselves and others, when we have these realizations. And again, that's why I'm so excited to use it with my people, because as I've shown to you earlier, like someone on my team had suggested personality tests, and I really love this as a way, she was saying, as a way to get to know other people within the group. And to me, I'm like, okay, well, let's ask some of these questions and really get to know people, in this safer environment. That, that it's, as a leader, I think it's part like imperative to create that space for your people.
Yeah. And I think it's brave and admirable as a leader who is trying to radically lean into that kind of openness. It ain't easy, you
It
know.
is,
And
it is not. And you even, earlier when you said that you're feeling overwhelmed, and I think that in doing that, your ability to recognize your own vulnerability and then share that again and share it in such a public way is really important. None of us are perfect. We're not robots. We're not all these things. And I think the more that we can be real as real leaders, real authentic people, it gives everybody else this like breathing room that to a large degree, I think many of us suffer similarly, but it's done a lot of times, with this like veil of secrecy. And so, I just really applaud your ability to share and to continue to grow through it and evolve. And you've also talked a bit about purpose. And so I'd like to zoom in a little bit there. You've been able to tap into your purpose and help others do that. And I think I'm going to pause on it because I think sometimes when people say, what's your purpose? Or they get asked that question, it feels very daunting. And like everybody's expected to have that answer right away. And
yeah,
so I think kind of in that same vein of humanity and being authentic is like sometimes the identifying purpose comes in time. So would love to share, love for you to share, what you're doing on the purpose side of things as it relates to your, the work that you're doing.
yeah. Oh man, I got like a little bit of sadness when I thought about, they say hustle culture and
Mm,
like the expectations that sets. And the last thing I would ever want to do is create some sort of analog around purpose. But but I relate to it. I have empathy for that perspective because I can still very much remember when it seemed like this really elusive quest for me. I
yeah.
remember I'm an avid journaler and I have been for a long time, but I remember a lot of it was futile. Well, not futile because it all adds up, right? But I just didn't have as clear of like a way of directing my inner knowing, if you will,
Mm,
to use a bit more of a new agey term, but I just didn't really know. And through my work on unpacking that and exploring that over 10 years is what's helped us to translate that into like a curriculum, if you
mm,
will. But I mean, you talk about expectations, and I think one very foundational thing, if I can leave people with alongside you, is just take the baton of that and say that most of us are living through our version of expectations. We did
mm.
a workshop for my alma mater, Hamilton College, and it was essentially with first years and second years. It was called Know Thyself, which is going to be similar to the consumer workshop that we're going to do at the top of the year, that we're
Okay.
calling New Year, New Beginnings.
Okay.
Um, but what we really focused on was helping people connect to their somatic experience,
Mm.
their body's way of telling them that there's something to be paid attention to.
Ooh.
Yeah. And
Yes,
then
I'm just saying that because I have gone through it myself. So yes, keep talking about it.
so we teach that as a foundational tool.
Yeah.
It's a part of like what we call the language of feelings, which
Mm,
is I feel something, I'm attuned to that, but now I know the five core emotions and I can get curious about which emotion this sensation is tied to. Like, for example, in heavy workplaces, anxiety, right? Anxiety is an output of perhaps excitement about what you're doing or fear about what you're doing. But if you're not willing to investigate how it's manifesting in your body, you can't then dissect whether it's like, I'm afraid of this, I need to prepare more, or I'm
mm,
excited and maybe I just need to lean into the opportunity here, perhaps.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
more you're attuned to what's happening, you can go from physical sensation to connecting it to what's really happening. So we taught that, and then we taught how you can channel that awareness alongside knowing your values and your purpose, or at least having something that resonates with you today, how you
Yeah.
can use the two of those things with regularity to understand whether what you're doing or what you're experiencing is in line with your inner voice.
Wow. Wow. That's so great. And again, as somebody, as I've shared with you before, I've dealt with anxiety my whole life, and it's only gotten, I experienced it more intensely in a very intense corporate setting. And you're so right, the somatic experience, like, and I have my own background to understand that connection. And so that I think it's so important to be able to do the work that you're talking about, because then you can almost create a little bit of distance from it, or you can start to identify what's actually behind it, which helps you to, move through it. So that sounds so impactful and so important. And so you said you've got a workshop coming up at the beginning of the year, so in January for that. And is it open to the public?
It's open to the public.
Okay.
This event, we'll do an end of the year event that is free, but this experience will be paid.
Okay.
It's called the New Year,
New beginning. I wrote it down.
New Year, New Beginnings experience. And if people want to learn more about it, they can go to actuallycurious.com/events.
Great. Well, we will include that when we post this, but that's fantastic. And so I think it's this thing, like, sometimes I like to ask people, like, who is what you're doing for and who is it not for? And again, I think one of the things that I love about what you're doing is how accessible you're making it, because I think this work is so important across the board.
Yeah. Well, I think it's for, I know it's for everyone. We see empathy as a total market opportunity.
Absolutely.
And we have to take our own self-care and break off what we can handle one piece at a time. But it's hard sometimes. We have deep compassion for people who we differ with and who may be acting out pain at this moment, because we believe that everyone innately is good. It's at times what happens to us that makes us do things that aren't good. So that's our guiding belief. And our goal is to continue to create in ways that helps us proliferate tools of empathy and curiosity about how we can be more empathetic to ourselves and one another.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so grateful that you spent time with me today, with us today. Thank you so much for coming and sharing from your heart, from your mind, all that you're doing. And folks, check them out. I promise you, all they're doing is incredibly helpful and infectious. So with that, I will let you back to work and all the good stuff that you're doing. So thank you so much, Michael.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you for this opportunity.